Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Philip Edu. I'm one of the methodology experts at NK, and today I'm going to present information about choosing the right methodology or the right design for a mixed method study. Um, for this, I've presented this study or this topic about 3 times. And everyone, I just want every presentation to be a little bit different. So for this presentation, I'm going to just focus on, choosing the appropriate mixed method design for your study, the step-by-step process of choosing the design. And the reason being that I've received a lot of questions concerning the best way of choosing the approach that suits your study. So I will spend a lot of time explaining how to choose the best one and making an appropriate decision, and also how to defend or justify the design that you have chosen, right? So it's all about making a decision and also justifying the design. And as I said, if you have any questions, please feel free and ask or type in, and we'll be happy to address them for you. And if you can't hear me too, let me know, because I want you to hear what I'm presenting to you. Okay, so before I present to you information about the step-by-step approach of choosing the specific mixed method design for your study, I just want to give you a basic information about, the main 5 or 6 main different kinds of mixed method design. So there are basically 2 types. We have sequential design, and also we have concurrent design. Sequential design means that, as the name implies, is you start with one approach and end with another approach, right? Concurrent means that you start qualitative and quantitative approach at the same time. You collect the data at the same time and analyze at the same time, and then present the result. So for sequential, we have 3 main types. We have sequential explanatory design, and the sequential exploratory design, and also sequential transformative design. And during the presentation, I will break everything down to you concerning the various design differences. And for concurrent, we have concurrent triangulation design, and we have concurrent nested design, and also concurrent transformative design. Always pay attention to the terms, the names, and the words, because it will help you to better understand what the design is all about. So the first one is the sequential explanatory design. So as you know, it's a mixed method because you are collecting 2 kinds of data, qualitative and quantitative. And here you can see that you're going to start with quantitative data, right? Or you're going to use quantitative method to collect your data, analyze, and then after the analysis, you continue with a qualitative method, right? You collect your qualitative data and analyze, and then interpret the data and combine them. It's sequential because the qualitative implementation depends on the quantitative findings, right? So you start with one approach with the quantitative. So qualitative is explaining the findings of quantitative approach or quantitative findings, right? So that's why it's called explanatory. You collect data. You always have to think about the fact that one approach will not help you to fully understand the phenomenon that you are studying. Each approach has limitations and also strength. So when you do maybe quantitative and find out whether there's a relationship between variables, you end there, right? They're giving you information about, oh, there's a relationship, or there's no relationship between the variables, right? And then qualitative will help you to understand how one variable is related to other, or how one variable is causing the other variable. So it's very important for you to think about it in this way, that the qualitative is playing a small or less dominant role in your study, right? It's just there to help you to understand your main approach, which is the quantitative approach. So that's why it's explaining the quantitative findings. So let's move on to the second one, sequential exploratory design. Quantitative study is all about exploring a phenomenon. Maybe you don't know the specific variables that are involved, so you want to first interview participants, analyze the data, develop themes, and based on the themes that you develop, you come up with concepts, and then you want to measure the concept. Then you continue with a quantitative study to help you to explore what you have identified in the qualitative study. So exploratory, you start with qualitative and end with quantitative. You can see that qualitative plays a dominant role, right? Your main approach is the qualitative, but you want to explore further to see what is going on. Maybe you have identified a concept that you want to know the magnitude, or whether the concept applies to a specific population. So you want to maybe develop a survey and measure that variable, right? You are exploring and see what is going on. So that's why it's called sequential exploratory design. You don't start the quantitative study until you finish with the qualitative study, right? So that's why it's sequential. Sequential because the qualitative study informs the implementation of the quantitative study. So the last one is sequential transformative design, and it's just like the sequential exploratory design and also the sequential explanatory design, but the difference in this way, this approach, is that the researcher has an advocacy role in the study. Advocacy in the sense that the researcher want to use this study to transform or improve the standard of living of participants, to improve the lives of participants, right? So let's say you are dealing with participants who have acute depression, right? So you maybe go in there and then you want to first understand what participant experiences are by interviewing them. Based on the interview, you come up with maybe a survey to measure some variables, right? Based on the findings, you help participants to improve or solve the problem that they are facing, which is acute depression. You have an advocacy role. You have a role in helping to improve the lives of your participants. So that's all about sequential transformative design. You are transforming the conditions of your participant. So do you have any question before we go to the concurrent? I'm taking my time to explain so that you understand the process. Do you have any question? Okay, so if you don't have any question, I can continue in the next one. So the concurrent, as I said, you're collecting qualitative data and quantitative data at the same time. So we have concurrent triangulation design, right? Concurrent triangulation design means that you are focusing on a specific study or area or phenomenon, and then you want to study the same phenomenon using different approaches. You use qualitative approach to look at the same phenomenon, you use quantitative approach to look at the same phenomenon and see the results, and then compare the results and see whether they are arriving at the same findings, right? So triangulation, you want to better understand the phenomenon, but you're looking from different lens, qualitative lens and quantitative lens at the same time. You collected the data at the same time. So this means that the same example, participant with acute depression, you go to participant, you interview them, and then immediately after the interview, You maybe measure some variables. You ask them to complete a survey or complete an instrument or a measure, right? At the same time, the reason why it's concurrent because you don't wait for you to analyze the qualitative or quantitative data before you do the next data collection process. You do the same information at the same time. They are happening simultaneously. One is not influencing the other. That's why it's called concurrent. Triangulation means that you are studying the same phenomenon. All the approaches are using to assess the same phenomenon and see how the results are so that you can compare and contrast and see what is going on, whether they are arriving at the same. Concurrent nested design. This is where you are collecting the qualitative and quantitative data at the same time, but one approach is playing a less dominant role. So let's say you are focusing on a specific phenomenon, and then you are using maybe quantitative to explore the phenomenon, right? So, and then use qualitative to explore a small part of the phenomenon. Because it's playing not a whole part, but a small part, qualitative is nested in the quantitative study. So that's why we call concurrent nest. Concurrent means that collecting the data at the same time. One data is not influencing the other data, right? Data collection is not, one data collection is not influencing the other data collection. So that's all about concurrent nested design. And we have concurrent transformative design. As you can see here, you have an advocacy role. You collect the data at the same time, but the difference between this and the other approaches is that you have that kind of advocacy role, an idea of helping to improve the standard of living or to improve the conditions of your participants, or helping your participants to solve problems. Sometimes you could use this when you are doing a participatory action research study where you involve participants to solve your own problem. But as you are involving them, you are collecting two kinds of data. So concurrent at the same time, concurrent. Um, for your dissertation, you can choose either concurrent or sequential, but sometimes because of time and resources, I always suggest to students to choose concurrent because for concurrent, you don't wait for you to analyze one data before you continue with another data, right? You go there and collect the two kinds of data at the same time. So you save time compared to the sequential. But you could use sequential if you have enough time and if you think that sequential will help you to better understand or address your research question or the phenomenon that you are studying. I think that you could go for it. So let's move on. If you have questions, as I said, type in the questions. I will be happy to stop and answer. So let's move on to the main presentation, which is determine the appropriate design for your study. There are 7 things to think about, right? So the first one is the purpose of your study. You can't decide the most appropriate mixed method design without thinking about the purpose of your study and your research question. So you start by saying, okay, what do I want to find out in my study, right? And what are the specific research questions that I want to address in my study? Based on these 2 questions, you'll be able to decide whether you have to do a mixed method study or a single method study, right? So you don't decide the methodology before you think about your research question and the purpose of your study. And then when you think about the kind of data that you want to collect, right? What kinds of data? Are you collecting qualitative and quantitative data at the same time to address your research question of your research question, or are you going to focus on qualitative? What kind of data do you need to address your research question that you have? Are you going to measure some variables? Are you going to interview participants? Are you going to analyze documents? How are you going to collect your data? What are the data collection strategies? in terms of, are you going to do an interview? Are you going to do focus groups? Are you going to do a survey? Are you going to analyze documents, right? And then who do you want to talk to, or who do you want to collect the information from? So these are the things that you have to think about before you decide the most appropriate mixed method design for your study. So as I always do, I give an example so that we use this example to help you to better understand my presentation. So let's assume that the purpose of your study is to determine the relationship between mental health stigma and health-seeking behaviors among teens with mental health problems in a low-income neighborhood in Accra, Ghana. And then in addition, you want to focus on examining how they seek for help to address their mental health problems. So there are two main areas that you are focusing on. First, we want to find out whether there's a relationship between two variables. Second, you want to find out the process, how they seek for help. So looking at even the purpose of your study, two things comes out, right? The first one is maybe you have to collect quantitative data, right, to measure their mental health stigma and also health-seeking behaviors, because you want to find out whether there's a relationship between the two variables. The second aspect that you can see here is the process. You want to really capture the process. How do you capture the process of health-seeking behavior? You have to talk to them. You have to interview them. You have to collect their stories for you to better understand the process. Quantitative might not be able to help you to assess the process of the behavior. Quantitative can help you to determine whether there's a relationship between variables, or one variable affect, or a couple of variables affect other variables. So looking at the purpose, you can see that yes, you're going to collect two kinds of data, right? So then you think about, okay, what are the research questions for my study? So the first one is there a correlation between the two variables that you are looking at? Because, you know, quantitative research question is close-ended. Is there a relationship? Your answer will be no or yes, right? So you need to measure two variables and try to find out whether there's a correlation between the two variables. And then your answer will be yes, there's a correlation between the two variables. Or no, there's no correlation between the two variables. So looking at the research question, you can see that it's a quantitative research question because it's close-ended. Let's look at the second one. It's a qualitative because it's open-ended. How do teens with mental health problems seek for help or mental health services? How? Whenever you start with how, it's open-ended, right? You want to capture the process. So looking at these two results, you realize that, oh yes, I think you have to collect two kinds of data. You have to collect qualitative data and quantitative data to better understand these, to better answer these two research questions. So based on the example, I just came up with this diagram. So as I said, the data collection strategy might be survey, right? You measure these two variables, mental health stigma and also health-seeking behaviors, right? And so you'll be collecting quantitative data for that, right? And who are you going to collect the data from? Participants who are teens with mental health problems. So, and also you're going to do interview to capture the process, how they seek for mental health, interviewing them. Qualitative data. And based on that, who are you going to collect the data from? The teens with mental health behavior or problems. So looking at the purpose of your study, you have to be able to determine the kind of data that you want to collect, the source, who are you going to collect the data from, and the data collection strategies that you're going to use. Without determining these, it will be very difficult for you to decide the specific mixed method design that is appropriate for your study. Any question? Okay, so if there's no question, I can move on to the next one. Okay, so the next step is to determine the role of each of the research design in terms of gathering the data, also addressing the research question. What is the role? Does the quantitative play a dominant role in your study, or the qualitative, or are they playing less dominant role, or they have equal role? Right. So I have this table to help you to decide which roles your qualitative or quantitative data will be playing, or the method will be playing. So you can see that for sequential explanatory design, because you are using quantitative, the quantitative, you are starting with quantitative, and the quantitative is playing a dominant role, because the qualitative is just playing a supportive role, right? And then you can also see here that sequential exploratory design, qualitative, because you start with qualitative, and qualitative will be the dominant role, and then quantitative will play as a supportive role or less dominant role. Sequential transformative design, it could be either qualitative or quantitative, depending whether you want to choose sequential exploratory or sequential explanatory. So sequential transformative can either be sequential exploratory or explanatory. The difference is that, as I said, you are playing an advocacy role, so it can be either one, depending on what you choose. Concurrent one, as you can see here, that concurrent triangulation, because they are addressing the same phenomenon, they have equal role to play, right? And nested, it depends on which one do you want to play a minor role. So you can maybe make quantitative play a major role and qualitative play a minor role. So the nested method will be the qualitative, right? So, and then transformative, as I said, depends on which of the two concurrent approaches that you want to choose, and also add additional advocacy role that makes it a concurrent transformative. So it depends on that. So this is just to give you information about the fact how it's designed, the role how qualitative or quantitative the qualitative or quantitative role can play in your study if you choose a specific approach. You don't have to worry about the approach right now. Just first decide what approach that you want to, which one do you want it to be dominant in terms of the role, and which one you want to be less dominant. So based on the example that I gave, so you can see here that the phenomenon that I want to study is the mental health stigma and also health-seeking behaviors, right? And then I'm using quantitative approach to assess, to measure these two variables and also find out whether there's a relationship between them. So for this study, I can make quantitative data or approach as the dominant or play a leading role, right? And a qualitative is just looking at the health-seeking behavior. A little is looking at an aspect of the phenomenon. It's not looking at the whole phenomenon. So the qualitative is playing a supportive role to help you to better understand the relationship between the two variables. So the next one is to find out, okay, what is the sequence? How should I, should I choose, I call it the qualitative and quantitative data at the same time, or should I choose, start with one approach and end with another approach? So the question you have to ask yourself is, does one data collection phase inform the other phase? If your answer is yes, then you choose sequential design. If your answer is no, then you choose concurrent. Let's look at the data collection process that you're going to. So are you going to collect qualitative data and quantitative data at the same time? If it's yes, then you have to choose concurrent, right? If you think you want to collect qualitative data and then you wait analyze and get the result before you go ahead and collect the quantitative data, then yours is sequential. So determining whether it's sequential or concurrent is when you want to collect your data and analyze. So as you can see from this table, you can see that it's sequential explanatory design is sequential, right? Because you start with quantitative and end with qualitative. Sequential explanatory, qualitative, and end with quantitative design, and then concurrent you can choose from starting from qualitative and end with quantitative, or from quantitative and end with qualitative. And then you can see the concurrent. You collect both data at the same time. So they are one data is not informing the other data, right? That's what you have to think. Based on your research question, you ask yourself this question: does the implementation of the qualitative data or maybe quantitative data depend on the outcome of qualitative or quantitative data? If your answer is no, then you could use a sequential concurrent, right? So do you have to wait to get the findings of one approach before you do the other approach? If that's the case, then it's sequential. If that's not the case, then it's concurrent. So for our study that we are using as an example, you don't have to wait. We don't have to wait and get the results for the quantitative before we start collecting data for the qualitative. So this means that we can collect both data at the same time. So this means that for each participant, what we could do is that we could first ask them to complete a survey that contains instruments that measures mental health, stigma, and also health-seeking behaviors, right? And then after the interview, after the survey, completion of the survey, you interview participants for your study, right? And in this case, you don't have to interview all the participants that you surveyed. So you can survey about 200 participants and interview only 10 or 20 participants. Because qualitative is not about numbers, quantitative is all about numbers. Qualitative is about collecting words, participant experiences, and developing themes to help you to address your research question. Quantitative is collecting numbers. Numbers is very important for quantitative. So you have to decide the number of participants for your study for the qualitative part, quantitative part, and also the qualitative part. They don't have to be the same. So this means that for the qualitative part, maybe you can interview, after completion of the survey, you can ask them, oh, do you have time for me to interview you? Some will say no, some will say yes. Those who say yes, they interview participants for your study. So some of them, so this means that you get small number of participants for you to interview. For qualitative, numbers doesn't matter. The number of participants doesn't really matter. The most important thing is you are collecting information to reach a stage where there's no new information being collected, being discovered, right? You reach a saturation where participants are saying the same things and you have to stop the interview, right? So the next one that you have to think about is integration. Do you have any question? Okay, so there's no question. So integration phase. So you ask yourself, at what stage are you going to combine the two data or the two methodologies? Without integration, it's not a mixed method study, right? So we have four ways of integrating the data. The first one is that you can connect qualitative and quantitative data at the data collection stage. So as you know, for sequential exploratory design, you start with the sequential explanatory design. You start with a quantitative design, and then you collect your data, and then you analyze it, and then based on the findings, you continue with the qualitative phase, right? So you can see that you are connecting the qualitative data or findings to the quantitative phase, or it can be the other way around based on the design that you want to use. And for the separations, so for concurrent, because one methodology doesn't affect the other methodology, you are collecting data simultaneously, you analyze them separately, right? You don't combine the two, right? You just analyze qualitative and then analyze quantitative. And then based on the findings, when you are interpreting, then you can combine, you can merge them, as you can see here. So the same thing for the concurrent nested design, you could transform one of the data to help you to better understand the other findings. So this means that when you collect quantitative data and analyze, and then you collect qualitative data, you can quantify your qualitative data so that you'll be able to add information to your quantitative finding. So you are transforming the qualitative data, so that you'll be able to either add more information to the quantitative findings or explain some aspect of the quantitative findings. So in concurrent nested design, you could transform one of the data types. So, and all of them, when you are writing your chapter 5 of your dissertation, if you are using a mixed method, then you'll be able to interpret them and bring them together and see how they are helping you to better understand the phenomenon. So all of them, you have to merge both findings in the interpretation stage of your dissertation. Okay, so the example that we are using, so in this case, because we are collecting data at the same qualitative data and quantitative data at the same time, right? We merge them, we analyze the data separate, right? We analyze them separately and merge them at the interpretation stage, right, to help you to better understand the phenomenon, which is mental health, stigma, and also health-seeking behavior. So you merge your qualitative data and quantitative data during the analysis, not during the interpretation stage of your research. Okay, the next one is the rationale. This is very important in mixed method study because you have to give the reason why you want to use a specific mixed method design, right? People are going to ask you why using concurrent nested design, or why are you using a concurrent transformative design or triangulation design. You have to have, so this will help you to make an argument to support the need for you to use the specific design. So development rationale means that you are using the results of one method to inform the other method. As you can see here, This is quite good for when you are using sequential exploratory design. Most of the time when you are developing an instrument, first you interview participants, you gather all the information, you develop themes, and based on the themes you come up with concepts, and then can develop instruments to measure those concepts. So we call it a development rationale because you are developing instrument based on the qualitative information that you collected from participants. Initiation is when you have a contradictory result. And sometimes, let's say you review literature and you realize that there's a relationship between two variables. But when you collected your data and analyze, it says that there's no relationship between the two variables. So why is your study very different from the previous studies? Then you have to collect quantitative or qualitative data to help you to better explain why your data is quite different or your results is very different. Maybe there is some kind of, maybe there are situations in participants' life that is quite different from ordinary participants in previous studies. Collecting data, interviewing participants will help you to explain why your result is quite different from other results. So it's called initiation. Right, you are initiating something. You want to try to collect data to explain the discrepancies. Triangulation, you are collecting more than one type of data to explain the same phenomenon. Right, so you collect the data to explain, so it's just, you have a phenomenon, you want to look at the phenomenon from two different ways, right? Qualitative way and quantitative way. And then you try to see what is really going on based on the findings. Are they arriving at the same result or they are quite different? So that's called triangulation rationale. Complementarity. So as the name implies, you are using one approach to complement the other approach, right? So using different methods to address different parts of the study. So you realize that maybe quantitative cannot totally address a specific phenomenon. So you have to collect quantitative data to address the aspects that the other approach did not address. So one approach is complementing the other approach. This means that one approach has weaknesses, right? And then you have to collect data to address the weakness of the other approach, right? So they are complementing each other, right? So that's all about complementarity. Expansion means that you want to know more about a specific aspect of the phenomenon. You are using, you want to, you have your, based on the phenomenon, you use qualitative to study the phenomenon, but you want to know more about what is really going on with participants. Does the experiences of participants that you have interviewed reflect the experiences of the whole community? What are you going to do to do that? You interview participants, a few participants, maybe 10 or 20, and then you get your findings and then develop instruments and expand their findings, whether the findings that you've gotten from few participants reflect the experiences of the whole community. This is where you expand. You try to make your findings generalizable, if I can maybe there's any word like that. You want to generalize your findings, right? So you start with small participants and then you try to expand. Expansion can also be looked at, you want to better understand the phenomenon that you are studying, and you realize that the qualitative cannot only help you to fully understand the phenomenon, you have to do a quantitative study, right? So that's all about expansion. You're expanding maybe the generalization of your generalizability of your findings, or you are expanding the how the issue should be under, or the phenomenon should be understood, or should be studied, or to learn more about what is going on with the phenomenon. So here the table gives information about which of them is applied. So you can see that for development, for sequential exploratory design will be the best for you to argue for the development. Also transformative design, you can use development. Initiation, this is a sequential explanatory because you start with quantitative and we realize that maybe the finding is contradictory, and then you want to collect more data to really help you to explain the differences. So this is called, you can use initiation for this. Triangulation is for concurrent triangulation design, and also complementarity can be used for most of them except the concurrent one, transformation design. And expansion could be used for the sequential exploratory and also sequential transformative design. So back to our example that I gave. So in this case, we can say that quantitative findings, they are complementing each other, because qualitative findings might not be able to help you to capture or fully understand the phenomenon that we are studying, right? Without knowing that participant experiences, and without capturing the process, you will not be able to. So qualitative findings are complementing the qualitative findings, and qualitative findings are also complementing. So we can argue for complementarity. So people are going to ask you, why are you using mixed method design? You have to know these and choose. You can choose more than one. We can choose expansion and also maybe complementarity. But always have to make sure that they are in line with the specific design that you have chosen or that you want to choose. So the next one is expression of theoretical lens, right? So in this kind of, when you're doing a study, when you're doing a qualitative study, people want to know your theoretical lens, right? In terms of, are you using transformative paradigm, or you're using constructivism paradigm, or you are using, and if it's quantitative, are you using positivist lens or something? So theoretical lens are very important because they inform your approach, right? So in this case, whenever you are using your quantitative quantitative approach is dominant, you don't have to talk about your theoretical lens, right? Quantitative is more of positivism, right? You don't, because whenever you use quantitative, everybody has that kind of perception that you are looking at the issue from a positive point of view. But for qualitative, because you and what you are studying, there is kind of a link between you as a researcher and what you are being studying. There's an influence. It's more of a subjective way of inquiry. People want to know your lens. People want to know whether you are using constructivism or feminism or critical theory, any kind of lens, because it will help your readers to better understand how you look at things, because your background, your biases, your theoretical lens influence how you analyze your data and how you interpret your data. So if in your study, qualitative is dominant, people want to know your lens, philosophical lens. your assumptions. It's very important. So you have to describe your assumptions if you are using sequential exploratory design, because for sequential exploratory design, qualitative is dominant. For sequential transformative design, you have an advocacy role. So people want to know more about your role in this study, right? Transformative. Triangulation design, because most qualitative and quantitative phase, they all have all the approaches, the quantitative and qualitative approach, they have equal role in the study. You can make it implicit. You don't have to explain your lens, philosophical lens, or you could explain if you want to. But if you are using concurrent nested design and qualitative is your dominant approach, you have to talk about your theoretical lens. If you are using concurrent transformative, you have to talk about your theoretical lens, right? So that's how you, so in this case, because qualitative, I made a mistake here. This one, qualitative is playing less dominant role in this study. Because of that, you don't have to describe your philosophical lens, because people have an idea that it's positive, right? But if in this study qualitative was dominant, then you have to make it implicit. No, explicit. You have to explain your philosophical lens. So in this case, I made a mistake here. I should have indicated that because quantitative, not qualitative, quantitative phase is playing a dominant role, then you have to make it implicit. So in this case, you don't have to describe your philosophical lens, because qualitative is playing less dominant role. It's playing a supportive role in your study. And lastly, what kind of role are you playing in the study? Are you playing an advocacy role? If you are playing an advocacy role, then most of the time you might have to use sequential transformative design, right? Or concurrent transformative design. So these are the 7 steps. And then so for this study, we are not taking any kind of advocacy role. So in this case, it doesn't apply to this study. So we are not going to choose concurrent transformative design, because we don't have any advocacy role here. So, and also you can email me, and I have developed a tool that will help you to determine the appropriate methodology. So when you click on this tool, it will take you to SurveyMonkey website, and then there are a few questions. Based on the questions that you ask, based on how you respond to the questions, the system will suggest the approach specific design for your study. So the beginning to ask you some basic questions, and then you move on, ask you specific questions like, okay, so what is the sequence of your mixed method design? And then if you choose sequential, it will take you to questions that are related to sequential. If you choose concurrent, it will take you to the question. So based on that, you'll be able to decide the specific methodology. This is just a guide. It is a way of helping you to decide the specific design for your study. And you can also do it manually. You can also email me, and I can share this with you. So for this table, what you can use is, so I have about 6 columns, and then based on your research question and the purpose of your study, you circle the area that applies to you. So you ask yourself, concerning the sequence of your data collection, do you want to collect the qualitative and quantitative at the same time, right? If you want to do that, you circle where you have checked. So you circle them based on these information, and then at the end of it you count the number of columns, the circles that you have made based on the column that you have. So you can see that the first column you count them. So if you circled about 3 of them, so you put 3 here. So the second column is to circle 0, you didn't circle anything, you put 0 there. If the fourth column you put, if you circle only 2, you put there. The fifth column, if you circle 8, you put 8 there. The fifth column, if you circle 0, you put 0 there. And the last column, if you circle 1. So based on the highest one, it will help you to determine. In this case, if I circle 8 under the fourth column, then my approach could be, is just a guide, could be a concurrent transformative, concurrent triangulation mixed method design. So this one will help you to decide the specific approach that is for you, and this is a manual way of doing it, or you can do the electronic one where you click on this link and then it will take you there. So let me copy this link and post it in the discussion board for you to have access to it. And so copy here. So sometimes when you finish, so you struggle with it, deciding the specific. Oh, I'm trying to paste, it's not working. I think maybe you have to email me and I'll be able to send it to you. Let me see whether I'll be able to paste it. Oh, it worked. Okay, so you can click on that and it will take you to, and also if you wanted a paper form, as I explained to you, you can you can email me and I'll send you the paper form. So don't be confused. If you're confused, that's okay. Maybe it's the first time of you hearing a presentation of mixed method. So let's do a little bit of summary of what I've talked about based on the research question that I have, and then that will help you to know how to use the table that I have. So based on the research question, we started with the role. So we first analyze the research question and find out, okay, what kind of data do I have to collect, right? And then who am I going to collect the data from? And then what kind of data collection strategy should I use? Based on that, it will give you an idea whether mixed method is the right approach for your study. And if mixed method is the right approach, then you go to the first role. So what is the role of each method? So for the example that I gave, I think that quantitative will play a major role, and then qualitative will play a supportive role. So I circle these two. That will help me to know, after circling it, as I said, you go and then tally the circles, you count them, and then based on that, the highest, then you decide. It will help you to decide the approach that you need to. So concerning the sequence, we decided that we want to start with quantitative, the sequence, we want to collect the data at the same time, because we have a perception that we don't have to wait to collect the first data and analyze and then inform the other data, right? So we can collect qualitative and quantitative data at the same time. So we circle qualitative, quantitative plus quantitative here, right? We circle concurrent, the row that has concurrent. So we move on to the next one. We say, okay, so concerning the integration, we want to analyze the data separately, right? Qualitative and quantitative data separately, right? And then you want to also integrate the qualitative and quantitative findings at the interpretation stage, right? So you circle that too. And you go to the rationale. I think that complementarity will be the best because we want qualitative to complement the findings of quantitative and the quantitative to complement the findings of qualitative. So complementarity might be the very good rationale for choosing the mixed method and concurrent nested design or the mixed method approach that you want to use. And concerning expression, because quantitative is dominant, we don't have to talk about our philosophical lens, right? So we chose this one implicit, right? Because quantitative is dominant. If qualitative was dominant, then we will choose the explicit one. The last one is we don't have an advocacy role, right? So we didn't choose anything here. And then after that, you count them. You count them, as I said, based on this. I did not put the approach here because I don't want it to influence your choice. I put the column numbers there to help you to choose the one that you think is appropriate for you, circle the ones, and then after that, when you count them, then that will help you to decide which one will be the best. Okay, so any question for me? We are getting close to the end of this presentation. I just want to find out whether you have a question for me. I'll be happy to address them for you. And if you still need further clarification, we can schedule a time with us, and we'll be happy to meet you and have further discussion about your study. So this is the information about my information. If you need me, you can email nk.me@the Chicago School, or you can email me personally, or you can follow me on Twitter. So any question? If not, then we can call it a day, and thank you for your time for coming. Thank you, Felix. I hope I've mentioned your name right. And thank you, Benjamin. Okay. Bye for now. And bye, Dr. Glazik.